Over the Garden Wall, a Cartoon Network miniseries which is considered by many to be one of the best fairy tales in the modern era, and a yearly watch every Halloween. This excellent series has many influences from all over Americana, but one of the greatest influences is the folklore of New England. And in this video, we shall be exploring all of the major influences on the story. There are many. Please get ready, come along with me for the journey.
Over the Garden Wall's setting, the mysterious realm known as the Unknown, has an aesthetic very similar to that of 16 and 1700s New England. But this influence also extends into the very culture and folk stories of the time. And there is no better place to start with this than to discuss the villain of Over the Garden Wall, the Beast. This is also a great time for a spoiler warning. Some of the most important parts of the show will be talked about in this video. So if you have not seen it, please consider watching the show before viewing this.
He lurks out there in the unknown, seeking those who are far from home, hoping never to let you return. Ooh, better beware. Ooh, the beast is out there. Ooh, better be wise and don't believe his lies. For once your will begins to spoil, he'll turn you to a tree of oil and use you in his lantern for to burn.
In Over the Garden Wall, the Beast is a character which constantly lurks in the shadows of the Unknown's forest. He watches as the people lost in the unknown wander through the woods trying to get home, as he does what he can to get them to give up. He does this because when someone gives up in the unknown, they begin to turn into an edelwood tree. Their soul creates the oil which keeps the flame of the lantern holding the beast's soul burning. On top of this, he also manipulates people like the woodsman into refining the oil from these trees by taking advantage of their grief. Many of these ideas are ripped straight out of puritanical views about the devil. The Puritans were a group which, as the name may suggest, wanted to purify the Church of England. For instance, they did not celebrate any kind of religious holidays. The Puritanical Church removed many aspects of the Christian faith that were common within other denominations. But they did keep the devil, and they made him a much more active figure. Just like Over the Garden Wall's Beast, the Puritans believed that the devil was always lurking in the shadows of the woods to influence the people in an effort to ultimately steal their souls. The Beast and the puritanical devil are clearly very similar to one another. But the Beast also shares similarities to a more comical version of the devil which came about in New England folklore later on, around the 1800s. At this time, there were many stories of the devil being tricked by people, which is very reminiscent of the scene where one of the main characters, Wirt, manages to use his wits to defeat the Beast. Depending on how you interpret this, one may even say that Wirt's actions here are similar to the idea of a Yankee, but specifically the conception of the Yankee rogue, who figures out how to cheat the devil. When New England folklore mentions the devil, witches are almost certainly not far behind. Witches were generally thought to be women who served the devil. Events like the Salem witch trials are very widely known, but people do not tend to realize how prevalent the fear of witches was during these times. There were also major witch panics in places like Hartford, Connecticut between 1662 and 1663, along with numerous others. For much of Over the Garden Wall, our main characters are in search of Adelaide. They're told that she's the Lady of the Woods and that she will help them get home. However, upon arriving at her house, it is revealed that she is in fact a witch. She ties them up and threatens to replace their brains with wool, all while proclaiming that she serves the Beast. A witch serving the devil is very clearly reminiscent of what the Puritans thought was going on at the time. However, the show also indirectly explores another side of this, the women who were falsely accused of witchcraft due to the fear created by the puritanical folk beliefs. In the episode directly after the encounter with Adelaide, Wirt and Greg come upon a small house in the woods with a teenage girl named Lorna living in it. She has the two boys hide because she warns that her aunt, Auntie Whispers, is returning. This Auntie Whispers character, who we eventually learn to be Adelaide's sister, is made out to be the villain of the episode as she seemingly keeps Lorna locked away, doing constant work. However, as the episode progresses, we come to find out that she was actually a good person who was trying to protect Lorna from her curse. The previous experience we had with Adelaide set us up to judge Whispers negatively in a similar way to how the folklore of the time would have made it easier for the Puritans to believe the false witchcraft allegations. Finally, we have Beatrice the Bluebird. The fact that Beatrice works for Adelaide is very reminiscent of some later stories about witches and their bird familiars. These cases would usually depict someone killing a bird, which then causes a witch miles away to drop dead. Stories of this nature have appeared in multiple New England towns such as Gloucester, Massachusetts, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The fact that Over the Garden Wall has a bluebird that is working for a witch, who is working for the being that is essentially the devil, is undeniably a connection to New England folklore. It is incredibly impressive that they managed to weave together aspects of how the folklore evolved throughout the years into one cohesive narrative.
Among the fields of straw and stone.
There are a few other connections I was able to make between the show and New England folklore. One of which is the native people's conception of snakes. Now, the history of relations between the Native Americans of New England and the Puritans is nowhere near a happy one. There are numerous cases in which Native American folklore was twisted in order to make them look like evil people. One example of a character that received this treatment would be the snake. Snakes were seen as more neutral beings to many of the native peoples in the New England area. They were representative of the circle of life and death due to the fact that they shed their skin. In episode 2 of Over the Garden Wall, the main characters come upon the town of Pottsfield. They eventually come upon a barn full of people who are wearing pumpkins and dancing around. We eventually come to find out that these people are all skeletons, but I would like to focus on the leader of the group, Enoch. He is a large pumpkin atop a body of several snake-like strings. This character is very much connected to the cycle of life and death, and whenever he moves, a snake sound can be heard. While Enoch is a very scary character at first, we come to not fear this character at all. He may say things such as,
"And what about you? You sure you want to leave?"
Me? Yes.
"Oh well, you'll join us someday."
but he is really not that scary at all. He may preside over the transition between life and death, but this does not make him evil. And to drive this point home, at the end, Enoch sheds his skin and reveals a small cat. Once again, we have fear over something which turns out to be much more nuanced and harmless. While this does not really fit in with the theme of the rest of the video, I would like to mention the Highwayman. In episode 4, the characters come across a tavern full of people who refer to themselves by their profession. One of these characters calls himself the Highwayman and goes on to sing a musical number about his criminal lifestyle while justifying it all as an attempt to make ends meet. I bring this up because there is a history of crime-based folklore in New England. The figures in such stories are often sympathetic criminals such as Tom Cook. Such stories bring up the question of whether or not we should appreciate outlaws who do crimes for understandable or good intentions.
Oh, potatoes, it's molasses.
Over the Garden Wall could have just used New England and its folklore as a merely aesthetic inspiration behind the setting and the stories that take place within it. But the show manages to have some serious commentary on the negative biases folklore is capable of creating, while managing to keep the tone lighthearted. Almost every episode sets up something to be dangerous, but eventually shows us that we were wrong to assume this. It uses scary ideas which are very familiar to us, but then subverts the expectations those ideas create. Perhaps if us humans were more willing to understand that which is unknown to us, we would not have things such as the demonization of Native American folklore, or the Salem witch trials. We can only hope that as we begin to grow as a species, we'll be able to avoid the beast within ourselves and not succumb to our unknown.
This was only a very surface level dive into these connections, and I'm very certain that a number more of them could be found. On top of this, New England folklore is not the only inspiration behind Over the Garden Wall. There are many other people who have taken the time to point out numerous connections between Over the Garden Wall and many other stories and folklore from our history. It's always been quite difficult to really narrow down what the exact inspiration for this show was, and I think that just goes to show the beauty of folklore. It can definitely be a force for bad in the wrong circumstances, but I think it also can be a really helpful tool for humans to understand ourselves. The fact that so many cultures could watch this show and send some kind of meaning and connection to their own folklore just goes to show that at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have different life experiences, but there are certain things that are the same. We all experience the same things in some sense. And I think that recognizing this can bring us together. Thank you.
Over the treetops and mountains, over the blackened ravines, then softly it falls by a house near a stream, and over the garden wall.